remember those quiet nights when someone would read you a story just before sleep? Good evening, friends. I'm Mr. Narratory, and I'll be your voice tonight as we drift gently towards sleep. If these stories help you relax or fall asleep a little easier, consider liking and subscribing. It really means a lot. Tell me in the comments, what time is it for you right now? And do you have any little bedtime rituals? There is a stretch of road that curves inland from the sea, a narrow ribbon of worn stone and soft dust, lined with lavender hedges and the occasional low stone wall, beyond which sheep graze lazily and unbothered in fields, turned gold by the long slanting light of late afternoon. The hills roll here like sleeping animals, quiet and round, and the trees are tall but never crowded, as if they've all agreed to give each other a little space. The road is rarely marked on maps, and never spoken of in any urgency. But if you happen to find it, and it's always found, never searched, for it will carry you to a place where time holds its breath, and the air leans warm and honey-sweet against your skin, just before the road crests its final hill, where it begins to dip down into the valley. You'll see it, a village tucked into the fold of the earth like someone meant to keep it safe from weather and worry alike, where rooftops tilt slightly and the chimneys send up smoke that smells faintly of cinnamon bark and old oak. There are no gates, no signs announcing the name of the town, because everyone who arrives already understands that names here are beside the point. The road simply narrows, becomes a lane, and then, without noticing, you've arrived. The light is always the same here, the kind of late sun glow that paints everything with a quiet, flattering softness. Shop windows glint gently, puddles shimmer with low sky, and every tree throws long, dappled shadows across the cobblestones as if reaching to tuck the town into bed. Cats lounge in doorways, tails twitching occasionally, and the air smells like warm bread, dry grass, and the faint perfume of something citrus blooming just out of view. The first sound is usually footsteps, low ones, followed by the hush of wind through branches and the light clink of teacups being set down onto saucers behind windows left slightly ajar. No one moves with haste here. There is no call to be anywhere in particular, no bells or chimes to mark hours. Even the clocks are slow, their hands drifting with the lazy curiosity of something that's only heard about time secondhand. A man walks down the lane in a linen coat with dried thyme in his pocket, and a girl in boots 2 sizes too large trails behind a dog that refuses to be leashed. Above them, sparrows dart in soft arcs between roofs, dipping low to skim the gutters before vanishing again into shadow. At the edge of the square stands the bakery, its windows fogged with gentle heat and the scent of rising dough, and beside it, a bookshop whose shelves bend under the weight of volumes that remember more than they reveal. If you stand at the center of the square and listen carefully, you'll hear the fountain, its water spilling endlessly over stone that has been worn smooth by time and touch alike. The buildings are all different colors, though nothing too bright dusty blue, soft clay red, yellow like old paper, and every one of them leans slightly, as if in lifelong conversation with its neighbor. The benches are always warm from the sun, though no one ever seems to have seen it climb or fall, and the sky overhead remains in its golden hour hush, neither fading nor advancing, just holding steady in the way certain songs do when played very softly on familiar instruments. The people who live here are not unknowable, but neither do they rush to introduce themselves. They smile gently, nod if you pass by, and return to whatever they were doing, shelling peas, weaving thread, hanging laundry that dances lightly in the slow breeze. It is a town that asks for nothing but your quiet company, a town that wraps itself around you, not in welcome, but in calm recognition. You've come at the right time, it seems to say, and that time is always just before sunset. Stepping off the cobbled square, you follow a narrow alley that bends between low stone buildings and opens onto the side of the hill, where the houses stand in small clusters, their windows aglow with lamps that burn in gentle copper tones rather than harsh white light, casting soft pools of illumination on the thirsty ivy clinging to mossed walls. Here, a single wren flits from a wooden eave to a flowering honeysuckle, pecking at pale pink blossoms. There, the distant murmur of someone gently turning pages drifts out of a second-floor window, mixing with the faint tinkling of a brass bell atop the schoolhouse tower, which rings only once a day, always at 6 o'clock precisely, though it sounds like a memory rather than a warning, and echoes through the valley in long, resonant waves that carry distant laughter from children who've already tucked their lessons away for the night. Meanwhile, the winding path leads you to a small bridge arching over a trickling stream, where the water slips over smooth stones and ripples around watercress, reflecting the honeyed sky in tiny moving mirrors. And an old fisherman, in a battered flat cap, stands patiently at the edge with a simple bamboo pole, his line drifting lazily on the surface, as though he's angling not for fish, but for the very quiet of the evening. That peace you can almost taste on your tongue. Across the bridge, the narrow lane narrows further, flanked by gardens planted in neat rows of rosemary, sage, and lavender, whose scents mingle into a soft, herbal perfume that drifts over low stone walls, and a wooden gate bears a hand-painted sign in fading white letters. Evening Teas, 6-8. Pushing it open, you enter a hidden courtyard where a low, arched doorway reveals an ivy-framed cafe, nothing more than a single room with rough-hewn wooden tables and mismatched chairs, each cushion plump and inviting, the shelves lined with mismatched teapots and jars of fragrant blends, rosehip, chamomile with honeycomb, green tea kissed with bergamotan. Behind the counter stands a woman in a linen dress, the color of russet clay, her hair pinned back with sprigs of dried lavender, pouring tea from a silver kettle into cups as she greets each guest by name. Evening, Mr. Calloway Darjeeling tonight? Of course. Good evening, Miss Temperley Jasmine tonight, as you like. The steam curls up like little white ribbons, and the click of spoons against china cups plays a soft counterpoint to the gentle hum of conversation, low and contented. In one corner sits a couple holding hands across the table, sharing a single slice of spiced apple tart. In another, an elderly gentleman in a well-worn cardigan reads a hand-lettered book of poetry while tapping his cane lightly against the floor, as though marking time in a tune only he can hear. And near the window, a girl with dark curls sketches in charcoal, capturing the dancing reflections of lamplight on her paper, as though committing them to memory. After a moment, you step back outside, warmed from within by the tea and the company. and the sky seems to lean a little closer, the stars beginning to appear in soft clusters overhead. Like a congregation of tiny candles, you wander on, following the path as it climbs a gentle slope to the churchyard, where the little chapel stands with its door open and a single candle burning on the altar, casting golden light on carved wooden pews and a brass lectern polished to a gentle glow. Inside, the hush is absolute, as though the walls themselves are holding their breath in reverence, and the silence feels welcoming instead of cold, a sanctuary for the mind. There's no sermon, no choir, just the hush and the glow, and if you pause to sit on one of the pews, you can feel the wood settling beneath your weight in an unhurried creak, the echoes softening on the stone floor. When you emerge again, the night has deepened further. Lanterns hang from wrought iron brackets along the narrow streets, each one lit by someone unseen who moved through the twilight, leaving kindness in their wake. And just beyond the chapel's hedge, you find a secluded bench under a blossoming magnolia, whose petals drift down silently like pale snow, carpeting the path in a fleeting hush of pink and white. You pause here for a moment, listening to the night air rustle the blossoms and carry the faintest lullaby of crickets and the distant call of an owl. And you know that this town never truly sleeps it, simply rests in its own gentle embrace, waiting for you to carry its quiet glow back with you wherever you go, long after the last lantern has dimmed. Beyond the chapel garden, a gently sloping path leads away from the main lanes and into a small orchard that curves behind the houses, half wild and half tended, where apple trees stand in tidy lines, but their branches spill over as if too full of stories to stay still, their fruit still clinging here and there despite the season's soft passage, and beneath them grow patches of soft moss and cool clover that cushion your steps, making the earth feel quieter, closer, more forgiving. Here, the scent is differentless of bread and teacups, more of leaves that have warmed in the sun, and a bark that remembers rain. And the wind, when it moves, carries with it a kind of hush that isn't silence, but something older, something like listening. Between the trees are small benches, each carved with initials long faded, and wooden lanterns on tall posts that light themselves without flame, their glow subtle, like the last light in a child's room before sleep. A fox moves ahead of you, pausing with one paw raised, then continues on without fear, as though your presence belongs here no more and no less than the sound of the wind in the grass or the slow sigh of the trees. A narrow gate opens at the far end of the orchard, and through it lies a terraced garden, not grand, not formal, just a sloping collection of planting beds and winding gravel trails edged in stone, with herbs and small flowers growing in quiet disarray here, rosemary and golden marigold, there violets and creeping thyme, and everywhere the low hum of bees working unhurriedly in the soft dusk, their wings blurring like the turning pages of an unread book. The garden belongs to no one, and everyone at once. People pass through it but never tend it directly, yet somehow it stays just as it is, season after season, tidy in its own unruly way, with paths that lead always to the same place, a weathered bench beneath a trellis of climbing roses, where a jug of water and 2 cups rest on a tray beside a linen cloth, placed as though someone left them only moments ago, though the water is always cold, always clear, and the cups never gather dust. Here, the sounds of the town recede further. The creak of cartwheels, the clink of dishes from an open kitchen, the distant notes of a violin played idly through a shuttered window, they drift by like clouds, present but never demanding. Sitting here, the view stretches over rooftops that tumble gently downhill, their chimneys leaning slightly, as though tired from long years of exhaling warmth into the air. A dog barks once, then falls silent. Somewhere, a spoon stirs a teacup. A wind chime rings. The sky above the garden burns with the last deep gold of near sunset. The clouds touched with rose and bronze, and the hills on the horizon have grown soft-edged and blue, wrapped in that sleepy veil of evening, where distance and memory blur into one. Along one of the narrow footpaths leading away from the garden, tiny candles have been set into low stone alcovesmal flames flickering behind glass. Not bright, just enough to guide your steps, and they lead, almost imperceptibly, down toward the creek. You follow them. The trail winds through a quiet thicket where the air turns cooler and the scent shifts again, this time to damp earth and slow water. The creek itself is shallow and wide, its banks soft with moss, and over it arches a bridge of smooth wood that creaks gently as you step across. On the other side is a meadow that belongs to the edge of Sleepa, wide open hush of space, lit only by stars and the steady rise of fireflies moving slowly through the tall grass. No one speaks here. No one needs to. It is enough to listen to the low call of night birds, to the rustling hush of breeze moving through half-lit reeds, and to the nearly imperceptible sound of the town settling into its gentle rhythm, holding the dusk like a breath. It's in no hurry to exhale. The meadow leads naturally to a path of flat stones, partially swallowed by soft grass and winding like a forgotten ribbon along the edge of a hill, curving slowly until it brings you to the western edge of the town, where the buildings thin out and the view opens to the far fields, a patchwork of golden grasses and hay bales resting like ancient coins beneath the settling sky. Here, the homes are older, smaller, more crooked in their construction, each one with shutters half closed and vines trailing down from their roofs as though time has curled up on their porches and chosen not to leave. Smoke rises gently from their chimneys in straight columns, disappearing before it reaches the low-hanging clouds, and every garden gate is left slightly open, a quiet invitation rather than an oversight. You pass an old barn whose red paint is faded to a blush of earth, its door ajar, and horses not inside, but nearby loose in a pasture, grazing silently, their movements so calm they hardly seem to disturb the air. A soft clinking draws your ear to a laundry line, where delicate wind chimes have been hung among sheets that ripple like ghosts, mid-laughter, and the breeze carries with it a scent you can't quite name wood smoke, perhaps, but layered with something fainter, like cedar warmed in an old drawer or the last page of a letter read too many times. In one of the houses a radio plays, too faint to catch the melody, and in another you glimpse the orange glow of someone tending to something on a stavino urgency in their motion, just the rhythm of hands that know exactly how long to stir. Here, too, you notice objects placed just so. A tricycle left leaning gently against a fence post, a watering can still dripping at the lip of a garden bed, a pair of boots turned neatly at a doorstep, as if their wearer simply paused to rest and forgot to return. A pair of cats sit shoulder to shoulder on a windowsill, not looking out but simply being there, watching nothing, content. The farther you walk, the quieter it gets, not in absence, but in tone. The very atmosphere of this part of town seems wrapped in linen and low light, in the sound of sweaters being pulled over tired shoulders, of books being closed with reverent care, of teacups placed on saucers with no particular need to speak. There's a shop ahead, though it has no sign, no hours, and its door is always unlocked. Inside, the light is amber, and dust motes drift in the air like small, slow stars. Every wall is lined with wooden drawers, none of them labeled. Behind the counter, no one waits. This is not a place for exchange, but for quiet choosing. You pull open a drawer at random and find it filled with small pieces of cloth, hand-stitched in tiny patterns, none quite alike. Another drawer holds old maps, marked with trails that seem unfamiliar, though you recognize something in their curves. A third contains letters folded but never sealed, written in careful cursive, their ink faded but still legible. Some are dated, others are not. They seem to wait, patient and unsent. You close the drawers and return to the door. The sun has not dipped any further. It simply lingers, brushing the tops of the hills with that same gold it's been holding since you arrived. Down the lane, the wind picks up a little, enough to make the weathered signs creak and sway, and it carries you toward the schoolhouse again, its bell tower lit now from inside with a golden lamp, and a figure seen briefly silhouetted against the pane, sweeping slowly, pausing to look out as if checking on the sky. Back in the square, the fountain still runs, its sound unchanged, its ripples catching light in soft repetition, and the benches here are more occupied, now couples, friends, old souls who need nothing more than the company of the hour. From here, you can see across the rooftops to the hills beyond, their lines now even softer, blurred with shadow and light. Somewhere a door opens. Somewhere else a candle is blown out. The town doesn't wind, down it settles, tucks in the corners of the day, and leaves the warmth on for whatever dreams might wander through. There's a lane that curls behind the bakery and disappears between two walls of ivy, narrow enough that shoulders brush leaves and fingers instinctively trail along the crumbling brick, and if you follow it without turning back, it opens, like a yawn, into a little hidden courtyard round, unevenly paved, half shaded by an enormous fig tree whose limbs have stretched outward, as if trying to remember every season they've ever known. Beneath it sits a circular table surrounded by mismatched chairs, none of which have ever been moved from their chosen spot. They've sunk slightly into the earth, legs softened by time, and the weight of years spent supporting elbows, teacups, and long pauses. An old book has been left open on the table, pages gently lifting in the wind as though still remembering the voice that once read them aloud. Beyond the courtyard, an arched trellis opens into the greenhouse, not a grand one, but charming in its way, with aged copper framing the glass and ivy climbing in from the outside like it's always known this place was worth staying close to. Inside, the air is thick with warmth and the mingling scents of citrus leaves, damp soil, and blossoms that glow faintly in the golden light, as if lit from within. There are rows of potted things, not labeled, just trusted to be known by those who come here. A pair of garden gloves lie folded beside a trowel, and a watering can rocks gently on its curved base. The last few drops of water clinging to the spout. There's a hum in here, not of electricity or machinery, but of contentment, as though even the roots have settled into their place. Through the far pane of glass, a cat watches lazily from atop a low wall, tail flicking every so often in approval or indifference. It's hard to tell. Outside again, the cobbles warm your souls, and the air has taken on that deep quiet that doesn't mean silence, but rather a town fully at peace with the hour. A curtain lifts briefly in a window overhead, catching the light, revealing the corner of a writing desk, a lamp, and a vase of something yellow. It feels as though nothing here is rushed, yet everything moves forward gently. Further down the hill, tucked between two homes nearly swallowed by wisteria, stands a music shop, though it's rarely open in the traditional sense. Its windows are fogged, the glass dappled with sunlight filtered through flowering vines, and when the door does swing open, a bell rings that sounds more like wind chimes than metal. Inside, the air is filled with a low hum of strings and the soft breath of woodwinds, not recordings, but notes that have found a way to linger long after they were played. Instruments line the walls, each slightly out of tune but never unpleasant, like voices in a dream that don't need to speak words to be understood. A piano sits against the back wall with its lid propped open, keys slightly worn but not tired, and beside it a stool whose cushion carries the shape of someone who sat there often and recently. No one minds if you play. In fact, the silence waits for it, not expectantly, but generously. Just a few notes, or even one, will echo through the room with the kind of resonance only found in places that understand the importance of stillness. Leaving the shop, the sun greets you again, unchanged, its light caught in the corners of every window pane, like a golden ribbon woven through the town. The birds have gone quieter now, and the sky has deepened to that rich in-between, where blue and rose meet and neither quite wins. Lamps are being lit by hand, one by one, not because the dark has arrived, but because there is joy in the glow. The baker places a fresh loaf in the window. A boy leans against a wall with a book half forgotten in his hands, and somewhere someone begins to hum, not for performance, but as a way of remembering the shape of the evening. It is not a place of endings. It is a place of resting in the middle of things, of finding the moment just before night when everything has softened into its most honest self. And there, gently, it stays. There's a path behind the music shop that dips low and follows the curve of a shallow stream, marked not by signs but by the way the light filters through the canopy above, dappling the stone underfoot in slow-moving patterns, like reflections from water you haven't yet seen. The stream murmurs quietly to itself as it flows, not fast, but with the measured rhythm of something that's known its route for a long time and feels no need to hurry. Smooth stones line the edges, and every so often, a small wooden plank bridges the narrowest points, not with symmetry or purpose, just with quiet trust that someone may someday wish to cross. Ferns crowd low here, softening every edge, and the air cools under the trees, taking on the scent of mint, damp moss, and the distant memory of rain. Further along the path, tucked into a hollow of ivy and low stone, sits a reading hut, if you can call it, that little more than 4 wooden posts, a sloped tin roof, and shelves filled with gently weathered books. They're not alphabetized, not arranged by genre, but left in the order people last reached for them. A worn volume of poems beside a field journal on butterflies, a short novel of sea travel, pressed against a hand-stitched booklet of recipes and pressed leaves. There is a wooden bench under the shelves, worn smooth by years of readers, and beside it a small glass lantern hangs from a nail, already glowing with the day's last light caught inside it. This is not a place for conversation or discovery. It is for remembering how it feels to sit with words and let them speak softly into the quiet of your own stillness. Beyond the hut, the path bends again and opens onto a small clearing where wildflowers bloom in every direction. Not a field, not a garden, just an unkept patch of beauty left alone long enough to arrange itself. Bees drift from blossom to blossom, lazy and full, and in the center stands an old metal chair facing nothing in particular. If someone sits there, they sit in the same direction the wind moves. There's no need for a view. The town begins to feel farther away here, not in distance, but in weight, as if the further you go, the less of the day clings to your shoulders. The light still holds, steady as ever, but quieter now. Less gold and more rose, painted gently across the edges of everything it touches. A curled vine, a chipped cup left on a stone ledge, a single glove forgotten on a fence post that's been claimed by lichen and time. The path returns eventually to the town, but not directly. It climbs slowly along the back edge, where old footpaths lace between yards and garden gates, past a narrow alcove, where someone has left a row of glass jars filled with dried herbs and handwritten notes folded beside them. The notes aren't instructions or explanations, just words, thoughts, names, paper worn soft and tucked into cracks in the stone, as if they too are meant to rest here. One has been pinned with a sprig of rosemary, another held down by a flat stone smoothed from the sea. There is no ritual to it, no expectation, just an understanding that sometimes something needs to be set down in a quiet place to be truly kept. From here, the rooftops stretch out like a scattered quilt, all sloped and warm-colored, patched with moss and leaf shadow, and behind them the hills gather again, darkening at their edges, but never quite losing their shape in the deepening sky. You pass a wall painted with tiny handprints, each in a different color, some overlapping, some faded into the stone, and above them a small wooden plaque reads simply, "Everyone belonged here once." The light lingers. Always it lingers. And in this moment, in this hush, you walk beneath it as if it was waiting only for your steps to continue the story. The evening deepens now, but it never quite takes full hold. The sky stays in that sweet interval, neither dark nor fully light, just suspended in a moment where time isn't measured in minutes. The town, in its sleepy quiet, knows this hour better than any other. People have begun to settle, but they aren't rushing. There's a kind of graceful surrender to the rhythm of the evening, a soft bending into the slow night. You pass the inn now, its stone walls glowing with the last flush of sunlight, the door open just wide enough to let the sound of a piano float softly into the street. The music is simple, but the chords resonate in the air like a promise, something familiar, something old. Inside, a pair of guests sit with a shared bottle of wine, laughing gently over a meal of roast vegetables and bread that was just pulled from the oven, the scent wafting through the open door as you pause for a moment. It's not that the town is idle, it's full of quiet, subtle motion, a different kind of work. A door closes behind you, a lantern is set outside, a kettle begins to steam quietly in a corner. These tasks don't belong to any one person. They belong to the moment. The moon begins its slow climb, finding its place in the sky, but never rushing toward it, not tonight. The shadows that stretch across the cobblestones are not long and sharp, but soft, rounded, like the breath of someone resting after a long day. You feel the coolness of it now, the way the air changes when it's still, yet moving all around you, an invitation to stay a little longer, to linger just on the edge of the twilight. The lampposts along the streets flicker on, one by one, casting a warm golden light that catches the edges of window panes and spills gently onto the ground. They're not the bright, efficient street lights you might find in other towns. These are the kind that soften the dark, giving it shape and texture. It's a light you could rest in, not sharp enough to disturb, but just bright enough to guide your steps if you're not quite sure where you're going. The fountain in the square begins to sing its quiet song again, the water trickling down in steady loops, as familiar as the heartbeat of the town itself. No one needs to rush to hear it. No one needs to rush anywhere, really. It's not that the town is still, it's simply in no hurry. In the distance, you hear the soft clink of a spoon against a teacup, the low murmur of voices from the cafe by the fountain, and the occasional flutter of a curtain behind a window drawn in for the evening. But none of these sounds push or demand. They simply fill the space around you like a warm embrace, allowing the world to stay soft, allowing the evening to stretch as long as it wants. And here, tucked beneath the weightless sky, you find yourself among the quiet of it all, walking slowly, letting your feet guide you down familiar lanes, past gardens where everything has been planted with care, past small homes with hearths aglow, where the shadows are long and the air still carries that golden hue that reminds you time doesn't need to be counted here. It's enough to simply let it unfold. The pace of the town matches your own. Slower now, gentler, as though it too knows what it means to rest in the moment. The path circles back toward the center of town now. Though nothing in this place is ever truly straight, it winds like a thought you've almost remembered, curling gently between hedges and lantern posts, each one flickering softly with the kind of flame that seems to burn more on memory than oil. A soft hush has fallen over everything. Not silence exactly, but that delicate stillness that arrives only when the world has nothing left to ask of you. The square is quieter now than it was before. The fountain still trickling in the center, but its sound thinner, gentler, like it too has grown drowsy with the hour. Around its rim, someone has left a row of small stones, each painted with a different image. A crescent moon, a sprig of lavender, a tiny window with golden light offerings, perhaps, or just tokens of time passing kindly. A few people still sit on the benches under the trees, their silhouettes wrapped in conversation too quiet to carry, or perhaps in silence shared between those who no longer need words to feel near. The lamplight paints their shadows long across the cobblestones, and in every window a warm yellow glows. Some windows are open a crack to let the evening air through. Behind one, A record spins low and slow, the notes feathering outward as if someone left the room mid-song but never turned it off. You take one last walk through the bakery alley, where the ovens have gone still but the smell of bread remains, lingering in the air like a story that hasn't quite finished telling itself. A cat darts past you and disappears behind a shutter, and a moment later, a soft hand reaches down to let it in. Across the square, the bookshop's door has been pulled almost closed, just a sliver of light escaping onto the walk, the bell inside giving one final, tiny chime, as if clearing its throat before sleep. You pass the reading bench beneath the magnolia, the petals now settled into the path, forming pale drifts that glow silver in the starlight. Somewhere in the distance, a door creaks open, then clicks shut a last sound, not rushed, just part of the rhythm of the place. The moon is higher now, settled into its place above the hills, casting a faint shimmer on the rooftops, like frost that doesn't chill. The streets stretch out behind you, empty of urgency, full of something deeper, not purpose, but peace. And though you could keep walking forever, and many do you feel the town beginning to gently close itself like a book laid to rest, not finished, not forgotten, but paused. There's a doorway nearby that feels familiar, though you've never passed through it before. There is no sign, no key, no need. Only a small brass handle, cool to the touch, and the soft glow of lamplight inside. You open the door and step in. The air is warm. The room smells faintly of old paper, candle wax, and something sweet, maybe figs or cardamom. A chair waits by the fire, a blanket already folded. No clock ticks on the wall. No questions hang in the air. Only stillness and the gentle hush of a place that keeps its own time. You sit, you rest, and outside, the town remains just beyond the window, holding its golden breath unchanged, unending, and always just before sunset.